Welcome to video 17 in the Aspiring Flutists Epic Inspiration course. This video is all about how to take flute lessons and get ready for rehearsals. I find that flute players often are not trained or coached on how to do either one of these things well, and they are complex subjects. If you love your lessons already, or you are totally ready for every single rehearsal, piano, chamber, band, orchestra, keep doing exactly what you're doing. If, however, you experience some common flute player challenges, like not playing as well in lessons as you do on your own, or feeling stressed during rehearsals, or maybe having some difficulties with teachers or other musicians, keep watching to collect some powerful clues and figure out some ways to smooth your path so you can feel confident as you take your weekly flute lesson and show up to rehearsals ready to go. I had so many wonderful flute teachers all along the way throughout my music education, but that didn't seem to matter. I sure found a way to be stressed out anyway, especially on lesson days. Now, when I look back and do what Benjamin and Rosamund Sanders say to do in their book, The Art of Possibility, Tell Myself Wiser Stories, I see that that stress had so much more to do with other things in my life, my weird relationship with the practice room, and my inner judges. Another great book is A Soprano on Her Head by Eloise Ristad, where she talks about inner judges and has some very helpful exercises and perspectives. When I look back and think about all those reasons I was stressed out, I realize it was really easy to pin it on the person looking at me that I perceived was judging me. You know, Brene Brown says that blame is just the discharging of discomfort, and that's definitely what was happening. So when I think back and I see it happening, even with my students, they're experiencing lesson dread sometimes, even though that's the last thing I want for them. I think it's explained really well by this Yiddish proverb: to a worm in horseradish, the world is horseradish. Think about it. If you're a little worm in a jar of horseradish, everywhere you turn, all you see is horseradish. And in the same way, our individual limited perspective on life makes us just see outside of us what's inside of us. Another analogy that really helps me to understand this phenomenon that I know I am not alone in experiencing is the blind men and the elephant. So these six blind men stumble on an elephant and they're trying to figure out what it is through touching different parts of the elephant: the leg, the trunk, the tail, the ear, the side, the tusk. And each one of them proclaims what it is. It's a tree, it's a snake, it's a rope, it's a fan, it's a wall, it's a spear, because they only have a piece of the puzzle and they are unable to zoom out and understand the big picture. In this same way, as a young, stressed out, toxic relationship with practicing undergrad, I didn't have the big picture. I didn't have years of experience under my belt of playing in professional rehearsals or being on stage in front of a big audience, delivering great music under pressure. I had limited experience and kind of thought I knew what was what based on that limited experience. And that happens so often to flute students. It's very easy to say, oh, my teacher doesn't understand me, or my teacher is not explaining things well, or I'm feeling judged by my teacher. These are very easy things to do. But throughout the rest of the video, I'm going to be talking about strategies you can use to interact with any teacher, no matter their personality, no matter whether they're positive reinforcement or negative reinforcement, no matter whether they're very aware of your perspective or clueless about your perspective. It is absolutely possible to show up for your flute lessons and learn a ton, no matter who your teacher is. It's all about you, your relationship to practice, and how you treat yourself on the inside. In order to collect clues and be really ready for a good flute lesson as a student, there's a tension of opposites idea you need to get comfortable with. And that is, on the one hand, your teacher deserves your respect, and you should be very open minded and try anything they ask you to try and take their constructive criticism with grace and a willingness to see their perspective. That is your job as the student. But on the other hand, the way to have a really good flute lesson is to spend every other day of the week being your own teacher. Here's an excerpt from Chapter 5 of the Aspiring Flutist's Practice Companion on how to be your own teacher. A teacher's job is to give you feedback, advice, and constructive criticism as guidance for your practice journey, but be proactive. Don't wait for your teacher's invitation to move forward. Give yourself permission and encouragement to find out what's next. In order to be your own teacher and see how far you can take things on your own, you need to think like a teacher. So record yourself often, and you can learn to match what you think you sound like to what you actually sound like. Flutists often avoid recording themselves because they're scared to face flaws in their playing. Be brave and record anyway. Your teacher is going to hear how you sound as you play, and it's really important that you know what it is that they're hearing. Use the following suggestions to avoid feeling overwhelmed and to get the most out of recording yourself. First, record both complete run-throughs and small sections of music. Listening to yourself play small sections helps you focus on smaller details. 2, repeat small sections of music many times in a single recording. This way you can listen for your habits that you would like to improve. 3, listen to the same recording many times and take notes on things you would like to improve. This will help you address each area of improvement one at a time without losing track of the other areas you would like to improve. Next, place your recording device across the room if you can, so you can understand your teacher's perspective, your audience's perspective, and avoid distortion from the microphone being too close. Next, use your phone to record if that's what's most convenient, but it's definitely important to use the highest quality recording device you can. If you have a really great iPhone or iPad, that may be enough, but use the best equipment you have access to so you can hear your sound as accurately as possible. In addition to listening for mistakes or flaws, take time to appreciate positive aspects of your playing. It is important to notice what you're doing well, just like it's important to notice areas of needed improvement. The way I think of it is this: if you don't use it, you lose it. I say, if you don't appreciate it, you lose it. Lastly, avoid judging your playing too harshly, especially when listening to yourself play something for the first time. Be patient and realize that each recording you make of the same musical selection will get better and better. Continue to record, listen, practice, improve, record, listen, practice, improve, etc. When you record yourself on a regular basis, collecting clues in the world of sound, it's going to help you embrace this tension of opposites, the idea that your teacher deserves your respect and open-minded willingness to try anything they suggest, but also you are comfy being your own teacher and you know how you sound. It's going to make it easier to be the student when it comes time for your lesson. Whenever I experienced lesson dread as a flute performance major, I would strategize before my next lesson. I would think to myself, okay, I'm going to be this certain way or play this certain way or say only these certain things so that I can avoid judgment and critique. And that was so misguided because constructive criticism and feedback is how we grow. All that busy brain from strategizing was making me feel a lot of fear, anxiety, worry. That's what I call lesson dread. And I have told you in every single video in this course so far, I believe love-based decisions are what make us great musicians, and lessons are no exception. So let me share with you what I wish I had figured out all those years ago so that maybe you can approach your lessons through love and excitement and optimism for learning instead of anxiety and fear of being critiqued. First, be yourself. If you feel pressure to play perfectly instead of authentically during your lesson, you are depriving both you and your teacher of the opportunity to do more meaningful work. If you try to perform perfectly instead of beautifully, you are preventing the audience from having the most enjoyable musical experience possible. And you're also depriving you and your teacher in the lesson of having the most enjoyable experience possible. Instead of feeling like you have to create a perfect version of yourself, connect to your music and feel proud of yourself for doing the best work you can, the best way you currently know how to do it. I remember I would hate lessons, honestly, and I would be so relieved when I finally just got to be myself on stage. And when I look back now, I realize if I had been myself in lessons, I could have gone further because I could have gotten feedback on my real way of playing instead of just freezing up and trying to avoid criticism and then finally feeling free later. I could have gone even further, and I want that for you. Second thing, trust the spiral. Spiral curriculum, an idea associated with famous educator Jerome Bruner, is a powerful model for the way that music education works. On the bottom rung of the upward bound spiral, you learn fundamental skills for the first time. As you grow and continue up the spiral, you circle around to the same skills again and again, learning them at a higher level and understanding them in more meaningful ways. Trust the spiral so that you can relax in your lessons. Your teacher may be repeating something you've already heard before, but the learning happens in the slight differences of the repetitions. Your teacher doesn't say the exact same thing, the exact same way every time, but each time a similar topic comes up, try to listen to the nuances in the way they explain things. Ask questions, interact. If your teacher is open to back and forth, then engage in back and forth. Really connect to understanding. And remember, your teacher is a human being, but most likely with more musical experience than you. So learn as much as you can and trust that even through repetition of the same skills, especially when there's repetition of the same skills, you can learn more and more. Spiral curriculum means every time you revisit a topic, you can dig deeper, climb higher. There's always more to learn. Let's keep talking about how to be radically flexible when you attend your flute lessons. First, keep it in context. During flute lessons, your teacher often will ask you to play or repeat a small section of music as you incorporate suggestions or try new strategies. In situations like this, it is easy to fall into the trap of playing your music in a mechanical or robotic manner. Instead of falling into this trap, remember to keep it in context. Play even the smallest sample of music with the same character, energy, and flow you want to include when you return to a performance version. Ask yourself the following question as many times as it takes, both in the practice room when you're on your own and internally when you are in the lesson. The question is, what is the point of what we're doing right now? A really great phrase that I love, it's from this book called High Performance Habits, is the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. So keep asking yourself, what is the main point of what we're doing right now? What's the main thing? Answering this question in your mind can help you stay on track and on the same page with your teacher who is trying to help you learn something new. 2, search for simplicity. Do you remember when you learned to tie your shoes? When you began, you learned the individual steps: cross laces, tuck under, pull tight, etc. After tying your laces for years, tying your shoes, of course, now feels like one simple activity. Similarly, most flute playing and musicianship skills must be broken down into their individual components in order for a teacher to verbally explain them to you. Instead of leaving the new skills in pieces, however, always search for simplicity. Remember that the ultimate goal is effortless execution of simple ideas. Stay open-minded. Instead of spending time explaining or defending your mistakes, play your music the best you can in your lesson and just be ready to learn. Be honest when answering your teacher's questions, but focus most of your energy on listening, taking good notes, and incorporating their suggestions. If you're having difficulty understanding what a flute instructor is asking you to do, ask respectful questions that give them the opportunity to clarify. Rather than trying to include every piece of advice all at the same time when they ask you to play, pay special attention to your teacher in the present moment, right here, right now, and focus your mind on the last thing they asked you to do before you play. Your teacher can always remind you about other concepts mentioned in the lesson to refresh your memory. Be sure to spend quality time practicing each piece of advice you are given before the next lesson so that they don't have to continue repeating themselves. If you think you might miss a piece of advice or a suggestion, ask if it is okay to record the lesson so you can listen back to it later. This is a great idea. I highly recommend it. Trying to impress your teacher with your progress, it can be a helpful practice motivator, but an even better idea is to focus on impressing yourself. When playing in a lesson, do your best to show the results of your practice, but don't let your feelings get hurt if your progress is not validated in the way you wanted or expected. Instead, just get excited about any feedback you can use to practice, grow, and impress yourself even more. If you think about it, when you go to the hairstylist, you don't get your feelings hurt if they want to change your hair. Or if you go to a massage therapist, you don't get your feelings hurt if they're going to work on your muscles for better change. In this same way, go to your flute lesson expecting your teacher to want to change you. That's part of it. Twist yourself. Twisting yourself means doing something so difficult that your insides might literally feel like they are twisting. To be a good student, you must bypass the resistance that arises in your body or mind during a lesson. When faced with a new idea that doesn't feel natural or easy to do, twist yourself and do it anyway. In order to twist yourself, you must let go of the safety of your same old habits, ways of thinking, and preconceived notions so you can venture out into the murky yet ultimately rewarding waters of uncharted territory. When you are focusing on a new idea your teacher wants you to try, there may be some awkward moments in which your normal tone or technique or confidence is not easily accessible to you. Trust your teacher and give all assignments your best effort, even if you feel out of sorts for a while. When making a positive change, things often get a little rough before they get better. Remember, to a worm in horseradish, the world is horseradish. Every single day when you are practicing your flute and preparing for lessons and rehearsals, you are engaging in repetitions, engaging in the process of myelination. In other words, you're programming in everything you're doing. And it's not just your technique practice, it's not just your flute playing skills, it's also your attitude and your relationship to practice. Now, I found that often flutists really want to grow, but their relationship to practicing can get really, really weird if they feel stuck. Here's some advice if you're feeling stuck in your practice routines, how to get unstuck and start programming in all the good stuff again. Have you ever tried over and over again to play something challenging without any luck? If you experience the feeling of being stuck, whenever this happens, just take a moment to breathe and remember there is always something you can do to get unstuck. Dissolve your resistance so progress that once seemed out of reach becomes accessible. Break it down into the smallest pieces possible so you can easily tackle them one at a time. Ask empowering questions so you can find some powerful answers. Convert complaints from practice frustrations into solutions. Create momentum so that difficult tasks begin to feel effortless. Take lots of breaks until the need for breaks has melted away. We're going to talk about the first two things I mentioned, how to dissolve your resistance and how to break things down. When you are feeling stuck, there may be some physical, mental, or emotional resistance that is getting in your way. Physical tension, mental blocks, and negative emotions can often block solutions that would be accessible to you if you were more relaxed, clear, and in an optimistic state. Take positive steps like exercising, meditating, or journaling to dissolve your resistance. Now, resistance can come in clever disguises like trying too hard, rushing results, or forcing solutions. When you are too aggressive in your search for progress, you create accidental resistance that can keep you from the very solutions you are trying to find. Avoid creating accidental resistance by allowing yourself extra time, extra breaths, extra patience, and extra compassion as you work through practice challenges. Break everything down into small, digestible, user-friendly pieces. One of the most effective strategies for getting unstuck is to break a practice challenge down into the smallest pieces possible. No matter how difficult the passage, you can already play it if you break it into small enough pieces. Once you prove this to yourself, the rest is a matter of patience, repetition, and putting the pieces together. Now, if you get really good at dissolving your resistance and breaking challenges down into small pieces, you're going to improve your relationship with practice. And the better your relationship with practice, the better internal attitude you're going to have when you show up to your lesson. Remember, to a worm in horseradish, the whole world is horseradish. So why not transform your horseradish into knowing that you can handle any challenge? In order to be the best flutist and musician you can possibly be, it's essential that you seek out a sing-along surrender type flow to your daily routines. It's essential that you feel flow and positivity about your practice sessions, your flute lessons, all your rehearsals. And sometimes when we interact with other imperfect humans, that can feel really hard to do. It's super common for teachers to say things that hit students in the wrong way. If you are the student in the lesson, it might be normal for you to feel embarrassed or self-conscious or maybe offended or just confused at what your teacher just said. Or if you're in a band or orchestra rehearsal and your conductor is up on the podium and you're dealing with your own inner judges, but then you're feeling judged by them, it can all just get very nerve-wracking and intimidating. And when others say things to us, we have a choice to either let that throw us off our game and really interrupt our flow, Or we can dedicate ourselves to our own musician life, our path, our journey. And yes, we want to interact with others and learn from them and get inspired from them. But if other imperfect humans, which teachers and conductors are imperfect humans, if they say things to us that hit us in the wrong way, it's really important to develop a skill that I call reading the subtitles. Here's a description of how to do that. Flute students, flute teachers, and conductors experience lessons and rehearsals from different perspectives and use different vocabulary. Anytime you are given instructions that feel intimidating, confusing, or even incomplete, pretend that you are watching a foreign film and can see the subtitles at the bottom of the screen. Here are some examples. Maybe your teacher says in your lesson, "Your vibrato is too wide and disruptive. You need to use a more appropriate spinning vibrato, like this," and then maybe they demonstrate. Here are some subtitles you could imagine reading. Imagine them saying, "Listen to my example and notice anything you can, even if you don't completely understand how to listen to vibrato right now. Try some vibrato exercises, read some online articles about vibrato, and listen to the vibrato of flutists, singers, and string players so you can get more comfortable with the idea of how vibrato works in classical flute playing. Vibrato is a lifelong skill that even professional flutists continue to develop, so be patient while you figure it out." Now, most flute teachers are not going to take the time to give you kind context like that. If you have a teacher like that, tell them thank you. But even if you just have a teacher that says, "Here, do it like this," imagine the subtitles, because all these things are true that I just read in the imaginary subtitles. Here's one more example. Imagine that a conductor says to the flute section, "Flutes, you are way too sharp and still haven't gotten this rhythm right. When are you going to learn?" Well, you could imagine the subtitles to this particular movie. Imagine your conductor actually saying, "I've had a long, hard day, and I'm feeling pressure to help this ensemble sound the best that it can in a short period of time. I'm not a flute player, and I'm frustrated that the flute section is sounding out of tune and uncomfortable with these rhythms. I wish they were better prepared so we could make beautiful music together." You know, if your conductor was independently wealthy, well rested, and you flute players were the only students that they had to teach, I am sure they would take the time to help you figure everything out. But conductors have to help so many people, and they have more work than you could possibly imagine. And a lot of times they're not compensated that well for this extraordinary amount of work. Teachers are imperfect humans, and usually if they're standing right in front of you trying to create positive change, it's because they care a lot about music. And if a teacher or a conductor is communicating things to you in frustration, try your absolute best not to take it personally. It very rarely has anything to do with you. Let's talk about the micro steps you can take and the secret sweet spots of understanding you need to seek out before you attend any rehearsal. Now, I happen to think that there are two primary causes of stress in any rehearsal situation, whether it's a piano rehearsal, a chamber music rehearsal, band, orchestra. Number one has to do with preparation. When you are unprepared, that will elevate your stress level and put you on high alert in survival mode. And in survival mode, we are not our best selves. So we are definitely that worm in horseradish feeling stress from the inside, but then when we look around, all we feel is stress. If you're in a rehearsal and you're like, "Ugh, the person next to me is sharp. Ugh, why did they say it like that? Oh, I can't stand it when so and so." Try to do a self scan and see if some of that stress is actually inside you and has nothing to do with the other people around you, and might be related to the fact that you're not feeling prepared and confident for the rehearsal. The second reason I think we experience stress in rehearsals is because other people have different ways of looking at things, and we tend to think that our way of looking at things is the only right way. We're going to talk in a moment about how different personalities can make rehearsals challenging, but for now, let's go back to preparation. I want to review my basic repertoire preparation acronym, BASIC. B is for breaths, mark all your breaths. A is for all details. Be sure and look up or translate any terms you don't know and practice all the details, notes, rhythms, articulations, dynamics, and more in your music. The next letter is S for score study and listening. We're going to talk about that here in a moment. I is for intonation. Make sure you've taken steps to prepare your part in tune. And C is for cues, write in cues. We're going to talk about that too. So if you look at this sample from the score of Enesco's Cantabile and Presto for flute and piano, try to imagine showing up to a piano rehearsal and you haven't done your score study and listening. You haven't listened to a bunch of recordings and followed along with the score. And so you get to your C half note with the hairpins, and then you begin to play your 30-second notes, but it's kind of nerve-wracking because the pianist stops playing and you didn't know that was going to happen. Then maybe you make it through and you get to the next measure, but then right in the middle of your G half note, the pianist starts playing again. If you didn't know their part, you hadn't marked your counts and prepared everything to the best of your ability, that can be very stress-inducing. So when you do your score study, I just want to remind you of a couple of things. One, it's very easy to get scores for the most part, but if you need to purchase something, it's worth it. If you need to talk to your teacher or band director to find out how to get a score, it's more than worth it. Two, you want to target some key areas that tend to be challenging. One, long notes. What do the other instrumentalists, especially a pianist, if you're going to a flute and piano rehearsal, what do they have rhythmically and harmonically, if you're able to understand that, during your long notes and also during your rests? If you are not super comfortable with rhythm, I highly recommend that you visit the video in this course on rhythmic resonance. But for now, I'll just say mark the counts in the score, listen along with really inspiring recordings, tap along, get familiar with the pianist's part or the other instrumentalist's part, write in your cues, little tiny notes that tell you what they're going to have. It is okay if you don't understand how to study a score in a really advanced way. It actually doesn't have to be that advanced. You can do very simple things like observe what the other instrumentalists have during your long notes and rests. You can mark key moments like pattern changes. I'm thinking of the Hindemith Sonata. There are definite pattern changes in the piano part that it would make you feel so much better if you knew that they were coming. If you are playing in an orchestra, it is actually a normal expectation that you, one, have your part completely prepared, two, that you know what the other instrumentalists have. Even if it takes you a few hours to explore this and really get ready, anything that you can do to invest in basic preparation for rehearsals is going to lower your stress level. And when your internal environment is more optimistic going into a rehearsal, you'll be surprised. Instead of your horseradish when you look around just being stress, 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 well, if you're feeling prepared and pretty good, like you know what's coming, you look around and your horseradish is still going to be there, but it'll be more like, okay, let's do this. Okay, I knew they were going to play that. Okay, I knew this time change was coming, so I'm watching for that pattern change. It's going to feel good instead of in survival mode. Let's wrap up this video about lessons and rehearsals by talking about that other challenge that can make rehearsals stressful, and that is other musicians with different personalities than ours. We tend to look at the world thinking our way is the only way, or that our story is the most important story. And on the one hand, it is. Your story is the most important thing to you on your musician journey. But everyone else is the star of their own story too, the star of their own movie. If you are in a woodwind quintet rehearsal, all five of you are going to leave that rehearsal with completely different memories. We all focus on different things. We all have different values. Something that helps me understand other musicians, helps me to be a better teacher and a better ensemble member without getting my feathers ruffled, without taking offense at things or getting my feelings hurt, is something called the Enneagram. Now, the Enneagram is a personality typing system, but it's a subject that has great depth. And I am actually doing intensive research on this subject and working on a book called The Enneagram for Musicians. I am hoping to bridge the communication gap between teachers and students, between conductors and ensemble members, and between you and your other musician colleagues. Now, the Enneagram, if you see it in these pop psychology versions online, it might seem overly simplistic, and let me assure you, it is not. There are so many people on this planet, and yes, we are all individuals. We are all unique snowflakes. But the Enneagram just provides a set of vocabulary for navigating our differences and for self-growth. There are so many things that influence the 9 basic personality types that you see on the screen. We've got wings, we've got instinctual stackings. We are definitely influenced by family members and mentors that have other personalities. And of course, all of our life experiences contribute to our uniqueness. But the 9 types do have basic patterns of internal motivation and behavior that if we learn about them, we can really understand where others are coming from just a little bit better, and we can understand what's going on inside of us. So I just want to say, if you want to download the PDF that I've linked below this video, it's a quick start guide to the Enneagram for musicians. Just use it for personal growth, not for telling other people what you think their number is or anything like that. But I just want to say that if you can either use the Enneagram or do other types of research, or even like through journaling on your own, explore the ideas that others, flute teachers, conductors, other ensemble members, everyone is doing the best they can with the information they have. And everyone is doing the best they can based on their own internal motivators and their programming. They have myelination and patterns of thought and habits just like you do. And odds are they're probably wildly different from yours. So I actually think it's amazing when any good communication happens. It's kind of miraculous. Don't go into your lessons or rehearsals expecting others to just roll out the red carpet for you and understand everything about what you need. You focus on you and just appreciate it when inspiration and education are available. It is amazing when that happens because we are all on different planets. But that's something that's incredible about music. Music is the universal language. Music transcends the languages of different countries, different time periods, and different personalities. If you focus on your own path, your own growth, the beauty and magic of music, and then just treat others with kindness and tolerance, you will go far as a musician, and you'll feel more empowered, more of a sense of agency to grow as much as you like. And I want that for you. I want you to grow into the flutist and musician that you want to be. And I think it's worth anything that you need to do to get there. If you enjoyed this video, I hope you'll check out the other videos in the Aspiring Flutists Epic Inspiration course. If you'd like to get in touch with me for any reason, simply send me a message at practicejunkie.com.